you live, and it's free because it's a special, most important episode in the history of the show. I got my main mans here. This is Daniel Lobdell, the wrestling nomad, and live direct from satellite, the man himself, Willie Saylor. We got a hugely important show, all sorts of great announcements. Willie, what's going on, man?
Well, it's an exciting day, although it's a little hectic. We have never put out the lineups this close. I mean, this soon after Fargo. It usually takes us a while to get things settled, and there's a lot more that goes into it than just who's ranked number 1 and number 2 right now after Fargo.
And we're talking about the titular event. Who's number 1, the event, and you're going to tell us the lineups.
Right. So a couple things. Well, first of all, the excitement this year seemed to be more than in the past.
Through the roof.
Seems like it's getting some gravity to it, some weight behind it, and that's sort of like forced my hand to get these lineups out as soon as possible because everybody wanted to know what the deal was.
We got ambushed at the post-championship interviews by a couple kids that wanted to send the message directly to you, Will. They wanted to know.
Kids were cutting promos.
Ben Askren had his guys doing promos, so we'll see how well those promos paid off.
Yeah, I mean, in the past it's been okay. Fargo, cool. Some guys get some golden tickets, and then you get some emails or some DMs or some tweets, and it's like, hey, do I have a shot? This year it was nonstop, like to the extent that I was like, I got to get this sorted out because they're driving me nuts. So we got it done. A couple weeks after Fargo, the lineup is essentially set. There's maybe a couple question marks. First, I think what I need to start off with is number 1. It's October 7th in the Snake Pit again.
Nice.
Great venue. We love being there. 2, the tickets go on sale the next Monday, so you can buy tickets there.
Sells out. You want to get those early.
Let's start with we have 2 honorary coaches all the time. One of them is set, and I'm very happy. I still have to decide on another one. There was a last-minute change with somebody that couldn't make it. But Cornell Robinson out of Missouri is going to be one of our honorary coaches. I love the guy. He's way unsung nationally. I mean, this is a guy that has won Coach of the Year honors in a couple different forms in Missouri. He's coached our Pan Am teams a couple times. He's been involved with the cadets and juniors at the OTC. But he doesn't get a lot of shine that a lot of other coaches do, and I hope this gives him a little recognition. He certainly deserves it. He certainly earned it. He coaches at Christian Brothers in Missouri and has coached number 1s like Malik Johnson and Sevian Severato. And this year he has Josh Saunders in, so I'm really happy to have him involved. Second, Sammy Julian will be our referee. He's one of the best in the country, best in the world, really. Mm-hmm. And so I'm happy to have him back. Last year he couldn't because of a previous engagement, but he did did officiate at Who's Number 1 2 years ago. So wanted to get those out of the way. And then we get to like some disclaimers. But we're going to do the lineup now. But I thought I don't want to like hold the suspense, but also this needs to be said. Who's Number 1 is about the number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4 guy, maybe. And just like let's bring it back to what Who's Number 1 is about. Who's Number 1 is this guy has a claim to number 1. This guy has a claim to number 1. And 6 years ago, 7 years ago, people were like, "Well, that's Willie, and he does the rankings, and why should this guy have a number 1 spot because Willie said so?" I said, okay, don't have the number 1 spot because I say so. I'll take the number 1 and number 2 guy, the number 1 and number 3 guy, and you guys can settle it yourselves.
Yeah, take it out of your hands.
Right. So that's the purpose of Who's Number 1. So when people, I don't quite understand why people say, "Hey, can we get this kid there?" Well, the kid's ranked 8th, man. I mean, it's not Who's Number 7.
That's a good point. People forget.
Yeah.
So it's number 1, number 2, and beyond that, I think we need to make it clear that I want kids in this. And when I said it's not just about who's number one, who's number two right now after Fargo, I want kids in who's number one so that it means something for the season. There's no point in, there's less of a point to having a kid wrestle 106 when he's going to be 113 all year. There's not as much of a point of a guy wrestling 152 if he's going to then wrestle Super 32 at 152 and wrestle 160, 170 the rest of the year. I don't want that. I don't want kids cutting for this just for this. I want it to matter to the ranking. So, that being said,
without further ado,
let's start off with 106. It's funny because we're gonna go weight order. 106 is the one that's not set, and
strong start.
Hey, we're gonna announce the lineup, and we'll start with one that's not set. But Richie Figueroa is the number one guy, right?
Unquestionably,
and it's not a question. He's the number one guy. I assume that he was going up to 113. He is not. He's staying down at 106 the whole year. So, who's the number two guy? Will Guida. Will Guida is already weighing in. He weighs 117 right now. He's going 113 the entire year.
He's a very tall frame. He can pack on. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he just kept going up weight classes for every year.
So I can't have Figs versus Guida. Just doesn't make sense. Who's the number three guy? Nicolas Rivera. He's going up to 113. Doesn't make sense. So who do I get for Richie? Who do I get for Richie that has earned it? Who do I get for Richie that's compelling matchup? Who do I get for Richie that's a fair, right? That doesn't outweigh him by too much. So I wanted to have the match set. Right now, I don't, and I'm not going to force a matchup that doesn't make sense for Richie or for us. So that's the one that's to be decided, and I really want Richie here. I think he's going to be special. His sister wrestled here last year, and a great family. And I offered him a golden ticket, not realizing that these weight things would be an issue. I want to get him here. All right, our first matchup that is set. And then I'll say the matchup. Nomad, you tell me what you think about it. 120, Kurt McHenry, Eric Barnett.
Fascinating matchup. Number one, Kurt McHenry. Number two, Eric Barnett. We have spoken on this show. We've spoken on FRL. We have spoken on GChat. We have spoken in person about how hard it is to rank Eric Barnett. He makes Super 32 finals. He wins Fargo, but in between that, had a goofy season, and I think Eric Barnett kind of speaks to how hard it is to not just be number one and number two, number three, but to then stay there. It's extremely difficult, especially when you're putting yourself out there and you're wrestling a lot of high caliber events. And then Kurt McHenry, right? He was in this event last year. He had maybe the best opening match we've ever had at Who's Number One when he knocked off Malik Heinzelman on the last second takedown.
That was tremendous.
And it was beautiful match, beautiful takedown, excellent battle between those two. I hope we get to see it again in college. I think this is the right matchup, and I think not just because he's ranked number one, but I think it heavily favors Kurt. I don't know how much Barnett is going to be able to do on the mat, but if I'm Barnett, I'm trying to win this one on the mat because beating Kurt McHenry on your feet when you weigh about the same, pretty hard.
Yeah. And for those of you that think, oh, what happened to Robbie Howard? Robbie Howard's probably going to be in season 26, so he goes up to 26. And McHenry, Barnett, I think it's a fascinating matchup. I think on any given day, Barnett could beat the best in the country. And we'll see how it takes place. We'll see how it takes. So who's number one?
I like how both those guys just mentioned that they wrestle so much and that they put themselves out there. And we see them all the time, and that's how you get up in those rankings and you're in a spot of who's number one is you lay it on the line as much as possible. And now we want to figure it out for real with the final matchup.
So I have two questions real quick, Will, because I don't want to stay on this one too long because we got other matches to do. But was there any consideration for Matt Ramos versus McHenry at 13 after Ramos won Worlds?
Yeah.
Good question.
McHenry doesn't want to cut down. He wants to bulk up. He wants to stay at a relatively high weight. Of course, he's a senior and he's trying to get ready for college. So I suggested, could we have 2 world champs wrestle at who's number 1? That'd be awesome. But Kurt wants to stay up. And for Ramos was the number 1 guy at 113. He told me he's wrestling the season at 120, and he just doesn't have the results at 120 to be considered the number 2 guy.
Fair enough. Let's keep it moving then.
Well, I do want to take a step back because we went from 106 to 120, and I didn't say anything about 113. Well, we're not having 113, and the reason is this. The number 1 guy right now, the number 1 guy was Matt Ramos. He's going up to 20. The number 2 guy is Jason Burks. And while I would love to have Jason, I would love to have him. I really wish he wasn't going up to 120, but he is. So I wish I could have had Jason Burks versus Greg Diakomahalis or Cullen Shriver. Shriver. But they're all going up to 120 at some point. Greg D told me that he will be at 113 for his state tournament, which I was like, okay, cool. You're in. You can be in. But the other guys will be at 120. So there was nobody to really have anybody with Greg.
So a combination of going up in resumes kind of prevented a 113 match from materializing that you felt would have been legitimate.
Yeah. I thought Jason versus Greg D would be a very warranted match. But they're going to be 120, so it doesn't really affect the rankings.
It's interesting you bring all that up because it's when you get to that high level, all these guys are thinking about college at the next level, and the lowest college weight is 125. So when you're at 113, there's plenty of talent there, but they're all thinking next level. So it has an effect.
And I mean, we could see Barnett McHenry a whole bunch at the next level. With McHenry going to Michigan and Barnett going to Wisconsin, they could both be 125s battling the Big Ten for a while.
Yeah. So we're going to get to a point when we hit 152. I'll explain something about moving weights too. There's another angle to it. There is no 126. If you heard, we leaked it a little while ago, but USA Wrestling finally just released it yesterday. Is that Robbie Howard and Carson Manville will be wrestling at the Youth Olympic Games. So I'm certainly not going to have a who's number 1 match at weights that they're at because they're proven indisputable number 1s.
Yep.
So this is about the number 1 spot. So no 26. 32 I think is probably the best match of the night. It's actually, in my opinion, the second best match of the night. But Josh Saunders, Jordan Decatur.
So I have one question. So first of all, I want super producer Tyler to show. We got some Decatur clips from his Fargo final, so I'd like for him to play those. But Will, I also want to ask you, do you think this will close out the night?
Maybe. I think there is probably 3 matches in contention to be the finale. This is certainly one of them. I think our 152/160 match, in my opinion, probably the best match of the night. And then also in consideration, we're going to have a 4-man group at 138, so possibly the final of that will be the final of the whole thing.
Okay. I can get down with that.
Teasing 138.
Yeah.
Teasing 138. 138, for whatever reason, the stars aligned that 138 and 170 this year were just so doggone deep.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that we can the best thing to do, the fairest thing to do is have a 4-man group at 138. There's a couple things going on. Okay, first of all, let me say the matchups and get your reaction, Nomad, and then we'll talk about some of the details. But 138 will be a 4-man group. The first matchup will be do I have this right? It will be Jojo Aragona against Jaden Abbas. No, it won't.
Gabe Tag?
Gabe Tag?
It will be JoJo Aragona against Gabe Tag.
Nice. Teamwork, guys. Good job. We got there.
JoJo Aragona against Gabe Tag. JoJo Aragona out of New Jersey. Actually, Pennsylvania, but...
Splits time.
That's another sidebar. We'll get to it, but JoJo's the only kid from Pennsylvania this year.
Oh, here's a nice clip of JoJo.
JoJo against Gabe Tag. Gabe Tag, the runner-up. What a great Fargo Gabe Tag had. And then the second match will be Keegan O'Toole, the Fargo champ, against Jaden Abbas. So the top three in Fargo all getting in here, along with JoJo Aragona. And a lot of people say, well, why is JoJo number one? He didn't go to Fargo. Look, JoJo was a top three guy at the same weight. He's coming back here at the same weight. He's the only one of these guys that beat number one Carson Manville, who's now number one at 45. Matter of fact, he has a win at number one at 132. So JoJo Aragona earned every right. Maybe the ranking at number one is a little, I don't want to say controversial, but a little, you could say, well, we'd like to see him prove it. Well, here's the stage.
Well,
right?
Perfect opportunity.
And we just showed a clip of him beating Ironman champ Stickley, who Stickley has a win over Abbas, and the guys that Aragona lost to at Super 32 are now graduated. Ryan Anderson's now up in weight. So Aragona, I don't have a terrible issue with him being number one. Before we get to before we move on from that, I want to talk about Gabe Tag, because it seems as though Tag's probably not going to be wrestling high school this year if he's at the OTC. So what was the thought process behind that one, Will?
I'm sorry, the thought process on what, no man?
The Tag, I thought, was not wrestling high school this year because he's going to be at the OTC.
Yeah, that's true.
So just the thought process of having a guy who might not be wrestling this year who's number one. Because I don't personally have a problem with it, but some people might. Because I think he's still one of those best guys.
A couple years ago, I had that same kind of thing, same thought process. You know, it's about the rankings. It is a little like a little bit of hypocrisy in that I say this is about the rankings, this is about the in-season rankings, and I want it to be about the in-season rankings. And so I'm only having guys at their in-season weights. It's a little hypocritical to say that and then also say, but yes, I'll take guys that are going to the OTC and not really wrestling their high school season.
But there's nothing stopping him from wrestling. He could certainly wrestle Akron, I assume, is the plan, and then there'll be some other tournaments if, he's just not having that high school regular season.
I mean, my thing with that is, a couple of years ago, I kind of found a way to mitigate that in the sense that, okay, we'll have Nick Lee here.
Yep.
If he wins the number one spot, he's number one. And then and he'll stay in the rankings until after Super 32, which he can wrestle in. And then I'll pull him. Right? And so that's what I did.
Yeah.
Same thing with Tag.
Hey, those four guys, by the way, if you look at the rankings, I like how you put the college in there for the high school rankings, because the top four guys are all going to powerhouse programs: Rutgers, Missouri, Stanford, North Carolina. For Aragona, O'Toole, Abbas, Tag. O'Toole is also one of the guys that ambushed and cut the promo after Fargo. But that just proves that these are the guys at the upper echelon, and it's also a way to say, who got the best recruit. I mean, I think that's something the college fans are going to be interested in. So if you want to know if you're fans of those teams, come check out your guy, see who's going to do the best, and go from there.
Well, and last year, and I'm going to get probably raked on this on BWI, but one of the big stories last year was that Penn State went 0 for 4. And,
even worse.
What's up?
I said, was it 0 for 4? I feel like it was even worse.
I think it was 0 for 4, and again, look, guys, losing it to who's number one does not prevent you from accomplishing any of your NCAA goals, but it was just an interesting note to be like,
right.
Kind of hard not to notice.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, now that you mention it, Nomad, Gabe Tag is UNC. There's another guy we're going to release that is UNC, and Eric Barnett was UNC.
Yeah. So
And then
good,
switch, so
good job by Coleman Scott Recruiting, who we tried to have on FRL yesterday. We're hopefully going to have him again to get more of his take on recruiting. I want Tyler to pull up a Keegan O'Toole highlight because O'Toole for me is really interesting. We talked about him on FRL about how he was hurt at FloNats and couldn't wrestle. He's the one that I identify as probably the best Askren kid. You see the Askren influence there. Now this is him. Wrestling tag in the Fargo finals. And so number one, you have this is a great scramble by O'Toole, by the way. You have O'Toole cutting a promo after the interview that he did with Spay, the finals interview, and then you have Tag going on Instagram and posting a story, a screenshot of a story with O'Toole and being like, "Hey, rematch at who's number one." So it could happen.
Yeah, they both win. They could meet in the finals if Toole and Tag win their preliminary matches, and it's fun to see the kids having fun with it. I mean, that's ultimately it's just another match to prepare on them. They all have these collegiate aspirations. They all have goals that go well beyond high school. So it's fun that they're getting into it too.
And now I want to bring up the clip of Abbas because number one. Abbas, to me, is way more problems in folk style than he is in freestyle. Now, you're going to see some crazy scrambles from him here. This is the Doc B finals. We also all remember him pinning Mitch Moore in the Super 32 semis. That's another clip we could have used for this. But the initial thing on social media was Aragona Abbas, Aragona Abbas, Aragona Abbas. Now, that would need to happen in the finals, but that would be really fascinating because you'd have East Coast, West Coast there. Abbas just committed to Stanford, and
you know what?
Won that a folk style matchup. I think O'Toole and Tag a little better suited for freestyle, but I think Aragon and Abbas a little better suited for folk style.
You know what, Nomad? Another thing that makes me feel good is that I am glad that there is a group of 4 that are worthy at 138. Because if there wasn't, let's say there was a group of 3.
Yeah.
Then you have problems. Then you're probably only going to have one match. But I'm glad there's a 4 solid guys so that I am relieved. Put it this way. I'm relieved that we can get Abbas there because Abbas has been at the top, through Super 32 and Iron Man. And for him to lose an early round match and not be able to get a mulligan would have been disappointing to me, So
well, it's also the Patrick McKee.
4 and he can redeem himself.
It's also Patrick McKee and Pat Glory last year. You had a little bit different, but Glory gets third, loses early, comes back and gets third, stays ahead of McKee in the rankings, but McKee gets the shot at who's number one against Howard because again there's the rankings and then there's the claim for number one, right? You talked about this. And McKee had the better claim for number one because he won Fargo, even though Glory was still ahead. And Glory ended up making it anyway because he went up in weight, and so we got him versus Teasdale.
That's a great point, and that's going to rear its head at 182.
No,
let's move on to
182.
Let's move on to 152. Now, I think this selection is going to surprise some people, but number one, I think the kid deserves it. And number 2, I think that it changes some perspective about who's number 1. Number 152 is number 1, Andrew Alirez, against number 2, Jace LaChow.
So that one pretty crazy for me. LaChow, a guy who – so Willie and I do the big boards, and we identified LaChow kind of a while ago based on – I believe some Reno and some Tulsa results, and kind of were waiting for him to come up. And the thing is, his breakout stuff is freestyle. So his number 2 ranking is primarily based on freestyle results. His head pinch and chest wrap stuff is incredible. And he ended up beating, how I think he really got here, is a kid who maybe has a more deserving folk style resume, but he beat Connor Brady in Fargo. And then Alirez, and it's a little easier to be ranked higher in California based on your folk style results, but Alirez out of Colorado, he doesn't have a whole lot in the way of folk style results right now. So this to me is probably the most interesting matchup because as prospects, it's going to be really fascinating to look at them because they haven't necessarily gotten to face or haven't necessarily had the results in folk style.
Yeah, to be honest, I've gotten some feedback from California people. Jace put up a pretty hefty social media campaign to be in Who's Number One.
Absolutely.
And while that's cool, I don't really pay attention to it one bit. I mean, you're not going to get into Who's Number One because you have more voters, or like you get more people behind you. You get in if you earn it, right? I do still think it's cool though.
Yeah, go ahead and keep doing it. Don't stop. But Willie is unswayable by he's not going to be moved by that.
I got when California people saw that Jace was in the mix for Who's Number One. I got several emails that was like, Willie, look, Jace is good, he's tough, he's a competitor, but
he got fourth at Cali States.
He's really not there. He wins a lot of freestyle matches. He's just not there. He took fourth at the state tournament in a bracket. How come Trent Munoz isn't? Trent Munoz won that weight class, and I don't care. I mean, Trent Munoz.
I don't give a what.
Trent Munoz went. I mean, no offense, but Trent Munoz went 1 and 2 in Akron.
Yeah.
I mean, these are rankings that take into account all things. My rankings aren't just folk style. And if you want to say, well, they should be, well, then start your own rankings and cry about it.
Yeah. Well, let's keep it moving because we got a few more announcements, and 160 is juicy.
I want to say, though, Nomad, that I like the reason Jace is in is because he freaking earned it.
Yeah.
Right? He had a fantastic Akron. He had a fantastic Fargo, where he actually placed behind Connor Brady, but he beat him head-to-head. And I think Jace sort of sends a message, or at least is an example of a guy who grinded his way to it. I mean, 1 year ago today, we weren't saying there is nobody saying Jace Lachow's going to be.
Certainly not Who's Number One.
Who's Number One? I mean, we might not have said that I guess in March we would say, okay, we can see how that could happen, but it's a long shot. But yeah, I mean,
and he's uncommitted, so anybody looking to pick up pretty high prospect, he's definitely jumped into my radar. Like you guys said, was not up on there last year, but big name now for sure.
All right, the next matchup, it's one of the best matchups of the night. It might be the best matchup of the night.
I agree.
There is sort of a weight thing going on here, though. And let me just throw it out there, and then, Nomad, you take it from there. Brevin Balmaceda, Florida. Alex Facundo, Michigan.
Absolutely love this matchup. For those of you who don't know, we just put out Balmaceda's school list. It had kind of been circulating again. Willie resurfaced it, got some quotes from him, talked to his dad, talked to him. That school list, by the way, again, uncommitted, Oklahoma State, Iowa, NC State, Rutgers, Virginia Tech, Ohio State. Balmaceda, a guy, again, getting back to some big board discussion, one who made us look really smart when he won Super 32 last year, coming out of Florida. And then Facundo, a guy who, look, I know not a lot of people can follow kind of the lower level stuff to the same degree that Willie and I are able to because it's our job. But, man, Facundo is a guy we saw coming, and he clearly earned the spot this year by making the world team. Had a great world championships. A guy who I'm really excited to see continue to make jumps as on the freestyle level, continue to make world teams. A guy who I think is the clear-cut number one prospect in his grade. And yeah, I think if Saunders Decatur doesn't end the night, or the 138 doesn't, I think this should be right up there with one of the main events.
Yeah, not to brag, but you guys saw it coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's. I mean,
pat
that's
ourselves
one
on the
that
back.
Good job,
Facundo
man.
was one guy that we saw that he wasn't like a Carson Manville where everybody knew his name before he got to be a freshman. Right. And we kind of saw it coming in Fargo, and And at Super 32 too, you know, Super 32, he took a couple losses, but kid's the truth. Number one in his class for sure.
Yep.
So the weight thing that I was talking about here at 160. So Facundo is going 160, right? If he goes to Super 32, he's going 160. Now Balmaceda, I approached him. I said, "Hey, Facundo at 160 for who's number one?" They said, "Well, we're going 152 for Super 32." And I said, "Okay, so but what are you going for the season?" They said, "We'll probably go to 60." And I said, "Then I would like you at 60." So they said, "Sure." They actually said, at first they were like, "Well, we kind of want to Lirez because he's in the pound for pound. We want that pound for pound spot." And
Thinking big.
That was pretty cool to me, right?
Yeah.
They went in the pound for pound. And I was like, you know, I'm sure if you beat Facundo, I'm pretty sure you're going to work your way into pound for pound. And also, if they go 52 for Super 32, they get a chance to hit a Lirez there too. So what will happen here is that if Balmaceda wins, he's number one at 60. If Facundo wins, he's number one at 60. But if Balmaceda goes to 52 for Super 32 and beats a Lirez, then he's number one at 152 for a while.
Then he's got two straps. Then he got two belts.
Oh, yeah, the Cormier look.
Right? Then he's Conor McGregor in it. But what my fear was, what was ultimately going to happen was that Facundo is going to go 60. If Balmaceda would have wrestled 52 here, we would have no head-to-head. Then in December, when Balmaceda goes 60 for the rest of his year, you're going to have a debate at 160. Who is it, Balmaceda or Facundo? Let's settle that now.
Yeah, as you explained, the perfect event to settle those type of problems.
We know that's going to happen. We know that's going to be a problem. So let's settle it now, and thankfully they agreed. Okay, 170. 170 was a curveball. I'll say who it is, and then I'll explain. Julian Ramirez against Carson Karchler.
So I think everyone after the Junior U.S. Open, I think pretty much everyone expected Dustin Plott to be in the mix for this. And if you didn't, well, then you
pay more attention.
You pay more attention, or you were in the pocket for somebody else. And Ramirez, a guy who
shows up everywhere.
He was in Who's Number One last year. But
there he is.
And we're gonna this is why this match is so fascinating. Part of why this match is so fascinating is because Julian Ramirez has one of the most interesting, scrambly, international-based defensive counter styles that you're going to see. Carson Karchler, such an effective takedown artist. They met last year in the Conti semis of of Iron Man, with Ramirez winning 4-3 in tiebreakers. So when Willie talked about giving the ticket to Karchler asked if they could go freestyle, and you kind of see there, Blair kids don't often lose matches when it goes to top-bottom in overtime.
I should ask Julian. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I should ask Julian. So one of the things I don't like about this match, I love the matchup. I love it. They wrestled last year.
Minute scramble, Julian doesn't give the takedown. Crazy stuff. Sorry to cut you off, Will. Go ahead.
They wrestled last year, Iron Man. One thing I don't like having is matchups that we're going to see for sure at Iron Man. We're probably going to see this at Iron Man. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to have it. Both these guys earned it. The matchup's incredible. We're going to have that match.
Yep.
But maybe, I don't know. Karchler asked for freestyle. We have Sammy Julian there. Maybe I ask Julian if he wants to do freestyle.
I love it. No.
Yeah, I would not complain.
Yeah.
And Karchler, we talked a lot last show, by the way, folks. This is a weekly show. Usually in season, we try to get an episode every Wednesday out for you. We talked a ton about Carson Karchler last week. You can check out the archives. But he's a great kid, and Julian Ramirez gets brought up just about every time because he wrestles all the time. Blair kid.
And Julian's
both
been
good
at
guys.
the top for Julian's been at the top for years. In fact, here's another situation where some people might say, well, why is Julian in? He didn't wrestle in Fargo. Julian's resume blows away everyone's. Don't start with that nonsense.
Julian is like a measuring stick. Like, if you beat Julian, you pretty much have a case to be number one in a lot of cases. I mean, that's how number one at 182, a guy who we're about to get to in a second, got there.
This is a guy. Julian has a win over number one at 182.
Yeah.
So, again, we're going to see that matchup. We're going to see that matchup at Ironman. Maybe we'll make it freestyle. But let me also say this about 170. When 170 was developing at Fargo, I was kind of stoked. I was like this. We're going to have a four-man group, and it's going to be dope, right? Julian Ramirez, Dustin Plott, Karchla, and who?
Starocci.
No, Keckeisen.
Oh, and Keckeisen.
Right?
Yeah, five-man group.
So I was like, this is going to be great. And I was all set to have that four-man. There's probably people around the country, specifically Wisconsin and Oklahoma, saying, well, why isn't Plott there? Or what? They take a couple losses, they're out. Why isn't Keckeisen there? Well, here's why. Karchla beat both of them.
Yep.
Head to head.
Yep.
How would it be fair to say, yeah, you just beat those guys, but they're still in the mix for your spot? I mean, it's not fair to Karchla. If they placed third, without hitting those guys, then I could see it. But
and then even going back to pre-Akron to May, June, right now Starocci's fifth and Patrick Kennedy's sixth. If you told me in May who's number one, I'd be like, well, it's probably going to be Starocci and Kennedy.
Right. Yeah, right? Kennedy's there too. Unbelievable weight class. I mean, 170 has been the best for
a while,
long time.
Great.
Big fan of 170.
Two more matchups, Will. What we got at 182, bud?
Two more matchups. 182, number one, Abe Assad. Number three, Devin Winston.
And we have clips of both these guys. I want to start with Assad. So Assad, a guy who he was committed to Army West Point, had reopened his commitment and is, a lot of people are associating him with Iowa. He's got Iowa State connections via Austin Gomez. But this kid is a freaking grinder, man. You see, this is how he beats Carter Starocci late in the match in Akron, a guy who, again, we just mentioned for 170. Assad wins a weight with Kennedy, Ramirez, Starocci. He beats Ramirez head to head. He beats Starocci head to head. Finishes ahead of Zach Glazer. All these guys. So Assad just a grinder. It's he had to come back from a loss to a tough Iranian cadet Worlds. Came back, got bronze, Izzy style kid. And then Devin Winston, we got a clip of him, and we put a different clip of from our shooter on from Fargo of Devin Winston not getting taken down for like 45 seconds.
This was it gave me like heartburn just watching it because something has to happen here, but he just went on.
So let's see if we can get this Winston clip pulled up. But Willie, a kid like Assad who's just gonna hammer you and hammer you and hammer you. How do you think he's gonna be able to take Winston down?
I don't know. Abe Assad has come such a long way.
Yeah.
You talk about Jace LaChow being surprised. If you told me that Abe Assad was going to be number one in the country, Abe Assad didn't place in a state tournament in 2017.
Yep.
Now he's number one in the country.
Yep.
So I'm just thoroughly impressed by him and his ascension. And if you watched him in his...
there's the Winston clip now.
He was not supposed to win that 80-kilogram bracket in Akron. And then he goes and he takes bronze at Worlds, and he is so heavy-fisted, heavy-handed. I really like his grind. So I don't know how the match is going to play out.
And while you're talking, Will, the Winston clip is going, and it's pretty insane. It's still been going the entire time you're talking about Abe.
I went up to the Missouri coaches. I was like, man, that Winston defense, quad pod defense, and they were like, dude, that was nothing. You should have saw his other match. Apparently, he did it like 3 or 4 times.
He just seems comfortable there, and that's a big part of that position is not panicking because you're so close to giving up a takedown. But especially in freestyle, you're good to go.
And that's a thing too that comes into play. The difference, just like Karchla and a couple of the other guys, with front head pinches and quad pod defense, that doesn't apply to folk style. But all of Assad's damage is in freestyle too. So you could say, well, Winston, quad pod defense don't mean nothing in freestyle and folk style. Well, all of Assad's wins came in freestyle as well. So we'll see what happens there. I do want to get out in front of something. Georgia people, Devin Winston is the only number 1, number 3 matchup. He's the only number 3 in here other than the 4-man group at 138. And you might be saying, why is Winston in and not David Key? Well, David Key certainly earned the number 2 ranking. And this might sound very mean of me to say, but I don't know that he earned the opportunity to be out who's number 1.
Willie, I'm going to counter with that. How about the good people in New York? Jake Logan beat Winston at Akron. What do you have to say to those folks?
I don't know. He got in. It's hard. He got injured. He got in. He lost to Marcelli. He was losing to Marcelli. He lost to Marcelli. Got injured while he was wrestling Marcelli. Winston came back and was the highest non-graduate.
Hey, Will, how many, like in each of these individual matchups, like about how many guys do you normally consider? Because, I mean, there are so many guys that you could make if you were, backing one person or another. I mean, I'm sure people throw out all sorts of different justifications.
I mean, I do the rankings, and I do them to be as fair as I can, and I get the top 3 or 4 guys, and I really do my due diligence with the data at the top 4. And so when I had those top 4, I'm like, they're the top 4 in that order for a reason, right? And, I get feedback and stuff, and some guys might say, I forget who it was, emailed me and said, it was somebody at 182, and said, why am I here and not here? I beat this kid, or like, I outplaced this kid. I said, I got to do this all the time. Somebody will write, and I look into it. I say, yeah, you're right, or no, you're crazy, or whatever. But when I get my top 4, I don't say that's the end of the world. That's how it's going to be. I listen to feedback. When they're all vetted out, and I have those 4, I'm only looking 1 versus 2, 1 versus 3, 1 versus 4, because that's the way they ordered that, and that's who earned it. So, while I think David Key is very good, I also think that he largely got that number 2 spot by one tournament. And so I went with Winston.
All right, well, one more, and for the second year in a row, we're going to have a girls matchup. Tee it up, baby.
Have a girls matchup. And, there's the 106 is pending. And if I can find the right matchup, maybe we'll have another win. I wouldn't be upset if we got a second women's match. So that's a possibility too. So 152 for women. Number 1, Macy Kilty, and this might come as a surprise to a lot of people. Was the matchup I wanted. She's going to be wrestling Kennedy Blades, an incoming freshman. She's going to Wyoming Seminary this year. She won Fargo Cadets and was not even allowed to participate in Fargo Juniors because she's too young.
Yep. So rising incoming freshman for Wyoming Seminary. We got a couple clips of here taking down Kilty. Now, this was in the Cadet Trials Finals, which Kilty ultimately won, went on to be a world champ. Blades went to Pan Ams and took a Pan Am title. So if you haven't seen Kennedy Blades in the rankings that we do in conjunction with USA Wrestling and the National Wrestling Hall of Fame, it's because she's not in high school yet, but she's going to be in the next group. She won Fargo. She earned this spot. Will, we're getting the wrap up here from the producers. I'm going to throw out one girls match that I would like to potentially see. Olivia Shore versus Mia Palumbo at 106 I think is a good option. But Will, I think we should wrap this up with kind of your overall thoughts of who's number 1 so we can get the next group in here.
Well, I love the matchups. I think the matchups are great. I think it's going to be a really good year. I think I explained everything in my process and why and the rationalization for each of the picks. I do want to say, however, you might be wondering why no 195, why no 220, why no heavyweight. 195 is a bit goofy in that Braxton Amos, who's number 2, is going to be going up to 220. So why don't you have Amos versus Kirkfleet? Because Kirkfleet's going to end up going up to heavyweight. Well, then why don't you have Kirkfleet Schultz? Because Schultz has to do Greco stuff.
He's got to get ready for U23 Worlds.
U23 Worlds. So while I wanted all those matchups, things just didn't work out for it. And but I love the card we have, and we're probably going to, the Richie Figs thing, potentially another women's match, and we are going to add a pro match to the card, most likely. So, but other than that, this is our lineup, and I'm really, really happy with it.
All right, stay tuned, guys. October 7th is the big date for the titular event. Who's number 1? It's going to be in Bethlehem in the Snake Pit on the campus of Lehigh. Willie, thank you for breaking everything down. We're going to have way more stuff coming on. The summer is basically who's number 1 and getting ready for college. So the lineups will be posted out here. Nomad, you got more stuff coming on all this.
Last thing to close this out. Next week, same time. We do this every week, guys. 10:30 a.m. Central Time. We do big boards. We do prospect rankings. I'm not sure which one we're going to do next week, but we're going to start rolling those out to get you prepared for Super 32 and the folk style season. Again, 10:30 a.m. Central Time every Wednesday. Make sure you're watching, and we'll get this Who's Number 1 stuff rolled out to you. Great show, boys.
Yeah, don't want to miss it. Normally, I also rank these guys because they get ranked too. So check out the archives. It's Nomad versus Willie. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
What do you think?